So when and how did you find out you were being sued?
It was a Monday, the day before the Trump election. I logged into email just about 8:30 in the morning. So I had this email going, we can represent you in this court case. And I went to hit spam. I just had this little inkling and went, hang on, and Googled filings against Montoux and saw the words FIS versus Montoux and saw it had been filed, I think, that morning. I was stunned. A lawsuit like that is a very rapid way to shut down a startup. That is a fact. Whether that was the motivation or not, that would be speculation. But the fact remains is that avenue is an incredibly effective means of stifling and smothering a startup. Your options are effectively stay the course and fight, go into liquidation, find a way to sell the company. One of the saddest things was I had all the Montoux conference kit, and one of the saddest things we had to do, we had a little van, was drive to the dump with all of the Montoux branded stands and throw them all in a skip. My husband said that was really sad. For him, that was the kind of quite a metaphorical point of going, it's all in the bin.
So eventually they did sue Montoux in the High Court in Wellington. The judge has been hinting at the appointment of a independent court-appointed specialist. So it's actually very good because that would give me a whole lot more confidence that the two software packages are going to be compared in a honest way. And that is that they'll look at the Montoux software and they'll look at the FAS software and say, like, where the bloody hell is all that copying? Yeah, the point really is that some companies buy companies that are competitors, some companies kill them, some companies just go competition. And you can kind of predict it. You just have to do your research on it.
So why don't you predict this?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's like...
Welcome to the Startup Theatre podcast. This podcast is produced by Empire Films.
Hey everyone, just a quick note before we start. This episode discusses allegations and an ongoing legal dispute. We're sharing the guest perspective and our commentary. Any claims mentioned are allegations only, not findings or fact, and nothing in this episode is legal advice, and we'll avoid speculating on matters before the courts. Now, on to the episode.
Hey, welcome to Startup Theatre, a podcast about startup tech and things that go around our ecosystem. I'm Serge Van Damme. I'm hosting solo today. We've got a couple of people coming to tell a story that I've really wanted to hear for quite a while. It's about a company called Montoux that does software for life insurers. And I've got what were the co-CEOs of that business a year ago, Shelley and Klaas Stijnen. And they're going to tell this story. They got sued by a big Fortune 500 company called FIS out of the blue. And it really, really hurt their business. It hurt them emotionally. It killed the team, killed the innovation. And the story's never been told before. So we thought here at Startup Theatre, it's a pretty theatrical story, honestly, I think. I'm about to find out more. But yeah, we wanted to hear more about that. And so I'll have Shelley and Klaas join us very shortly. Today in Startups in the Spotlight, we get to spotlight 3 startups that are going global from New Zealand and intent. And obviously we've been talking about insurance today and insurance tech. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but insurance is a pretty big sector. So yeah, let's do 3 insuretech companies. First one's called Policy Check. That's quite a young company. Simon Archer is one of the founders there. What they're doing is basically enabling changes in policies in real time to be maintained. Sort of like if you think about how Google Docs work, basically being able to make changes in policies if your situation changes. So you might have a new asset or a change in value in an asset and basically change that policy, the premiums and things around that. So that's kind of the thing they're doing. Symphony, which is SIMFUNI. Sean's one of the founders there. They do basically a workflow system, an enterprise workflow system for managing the customer experience. Starting with payments, how customers make payments. We all have insurance, or many of us do. It's really an antiquated thing. It's not like online banking where you log in and you can see everything to do with your payments and your policies and all of that stuff. So they're really enabling that that sort of online banking experience for the customer of an insurance company, again at the enterprise level. And then you've got Javelin, where Shelley is actually working at the moment. So Javelin, Javeln. So Javelin is basically a claims management, document management platforms focused on insurance brokers. And so it's just enabling them to just be more efficient in their day-to-day operations. So those businesses are all Kiwi founded. They're all improving the insurance experience, which we all know is antiquated for some of the reasons we've discussed today on the podcast. And they're trying to improve them through the use of technology. Those are 3 spotlights. Go and check those companies out, find out a little bit more about them. And if you know someone who's working in an insurance company, send them these spotlighted companies.
Today's guest is brought to you by Vanta. Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance for global frameworks like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, saving you time and money, helping you build customer trust. Over 8,000 global companies like Atlassian, Dovetail, Sharesies and Flossy all use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. I actually had dinner with the whole Vanta team and I knew instantly that they would be the sponsor on the podcast. They just genuinely care about startups, and to make it go even one better, they've actually decided that my audience gets a special offer of $1,000 USD off from Vanta. All you have to do is go to vanta.com/startup theatre and enjoy your $1,000 USD off now.
So when and how did you find out you were being sued?
Yes, I think it was a Monday in the US, Richmond, Virginia, the day before the Trump election. So that's why I remember the day. And I logged into email just about 8:30 in the morning. Thing about being a CEO is you get loads of like shit emails, like just people flogging stuff. So I had this email going, "We can represent you in this court case." And I went to hit spam like I do for most of the shit emails I get. And I just had this little inkling and went, hang on, and Googled filings against Montoux and saw the words FIS versus Montoux and saw it had been filed, I think, that morning. At which point I was quite stunned. I was stunned. Sort of stunned mode, knowing New Zealand wasn't online for probably another 6 hours. Yeah, going, okay, how does this play out?
What was the first step you took?
Within the executive team, we had a UK-based team member, so I could share it with him. So that's really the first step is going, okay, and then knowing that a lot of the legal contacts we had were through our New Zealand operation. So, it was really a case of waiting until Klaas came online and the directors of Montoux.
All right. So, Klaas, you woke up at some point that morning and not knowing what was in front of you. How did you find out?
Well, I just woke up and, you do your usual thing, and at some point you decide to okay, now's the moment that I should check my messages. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? And, saw Shelley's WhatsApp. And, swear word, we're being sued by FAS. And shock was probably the first thing, really, that I felt. It's like, what does this mean? It was like, you just have no clue because you don't have any experience with this. What do you do? It's the second thing that goes through your mind, and then the scenarios start racing. But I think the shock was even bigger because we just had probably some of the best 5 days before that. I was like, literally 3 days before the Tuesday, I jumped on a call with one of our biggest clients, and they said, okay, we're going to adopt Montoux as our core platform. And by the way, that involves migrating, quite a few models from FAS. And so, that was obviously the next big step for us. After the weekend, I'm going to be slightly vaguer on this one, but spoke to a figurehead in the industry who I catch up quite regularly. And he just basically had the best news that you could possibly have as a founder. And it just felt like 10, 12 years of very hard work was coming to really to fruition, especially after Shelley had been to a conference and in that conference, maybe you tell the story, Shelley.
Yeah, we'd been at the Society of Actuaries for conference, riveting as it sounds, in was it National Harbour, Maryland, the week before. So my colleague Stephen and I from the UK had been there, and it's the big actuarial conference, and it just felt different, and we both commented on it. We were like, it's just gotten real. Like, we are being taken seriously. We were being approached. It's not a big leads conference because it's full of practitioners who don't really want to talk to human beings. They just want to get free swag. But the engagement and interest in our software, we had it up on a big TV and there were crowds standing around it. So we just had this kind of week of going, things have shifted. Where, like, all of a sudden the headwinds you face as a small, hustly startup trying to get a foothold, it just felt like people were seeking us out, and that maybe things were going to get a little easier and maybe some doors were going to open.
So you're finally getting cut through in the market, things are falling into place.
Well, people saw the potential. I felt we'd cracked it. So I was obviously operating with our US customers, and I remember working and so actuarial modelling software. You got actuaries who model in your software, like build actuarial models, super technical, mathematical.
Do you want to tell people, the audience, what actuarial models are and what they do?
Sure.
Actuary.
Well, it's like, let me just step back. So, like the life. So we're focused on life insurance.
You being Montoux.
Montoux, yeah, and life insurance. All life insurance combined, they manage $20-25 trillion worldwide. It comes down to a few $1,000s per person for every person on the planet. So that's a lot of money, and a lot of the arrangements that those life insurers have with their customers are just like tens of years. They run for tens of years. So any decision that you make about an alteration of one of those arrangements can have massive consequences. So everything has to pretty much go through actuaries, because they are kind of like the mathematical, statistical kind of heart of a life insurance company. And so that is what actuaries do. They kind of, do a lot of calculations with a lot of data, try to predict the future as best as they can with numbers, and tell you whether you're financially well positioned or not, or whether a pricing strategy might be a good one or not, or what your risks are or not. It's like the actuarial models are just the financial beating heart of a life insurer. So it's really critical that thing works.
Yeah.
All right, and so what does Montoux do in the context of an actuarial model?
Yeah, so Montoux had built a leading-edge modern actuarial modelling language that actuaries could build their own models to run super efficiently on the cloud. And I remember, again, it was just a couple of weeks before this all happened, we were working with a customer and they were building their own models. And this guy was like, you would call him a hardcore modelling actuary. Like, he liked building his own models. He had his favourite, and we were not it originally. He was quite resistant. And we're sitting down in a meeting, and he's like, oh, yeah, I just built this super complex model, and yeah, I quite like your platform. And from an actuary, that's like going, whoa, this is 10 out of 10. Like, that's massive advocacy. And I just, at that point, I was like, we've cracked it, right? It's that single point of advocacy of an actuary going, I can build a super complicated model, it's flexible, I'm in control, and I can scale it and run it fast on the cloud. I just had this moment of going, wow, that's a breakthrough moment. And then all of these other events were, further proof points that we'd cracked it.
Yeah.
And who were some of your customers at the time?
Some of our customers?
Yeah.
The ones that we can say, AIA is on that list. They were public. Signet Chubb. Which of the other ones were?
Well, these
public?
are, our US customers were names you would, if you were in the financial services industry, you would recognise. These were not small players. These were globally recognised brands.
Half balance sheets of $500 million or more.
$500 billion, presumably.
$500 billion, thank you.
Quite important distinction for the listeners out there. Still both big numbers. I'd take both of them.
Zeros, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so who is FIS in this context? You guys have built a modern actuarial platform in the cloud, allow actuaries to build their own models more effectively. Who's FIS in this context?
Why don't you take this one?
Oh, right. Yeah. So FAS is really the when I started working as an actuary in early 2000s, they were the incumbent at that time. They were the platform that most people were using. There were a couple other ones, but over time they really became the platform that 80% of the world was using and still is using. So it's really a platform that was, groundbreaking mid-90s and hasn't changed all that much, in my view, not architecturally or structurally. And so, that is really what we were up, the typical legacy.
Legacy incumbent.
Legacy incumbent. Yep.
And are they a big organization or?
I think their revenue is in about the region of 10 billion US, 2.5 billion kind of like earnings, that kind of stuff. So it's big.
Yeah,
it's no small player.
No,
they're big in payments. That's actually their core business.
Gotcha.
As I understand it.
And so they're a big fintech. They sue you. What are the claims they made in the lawsuit?
We'll get to that point, but it's like there's been a couple of cases over time and lots of legal correspondence, and there's been lots of different allegations. But I think what it really comes down to is like, you guys got your hands on our IP. You put it into your own technology, and that helped you really get a head start on us, or not on them, but like that helps you just to become competitive without having to pay for it. And so, it's like one of the things that really got me also that morning was like, it was the shock that it's like, this is the first time that they actually said this to us.
Right, so they've never spoken to you?
There was no prior warning. Whereas, later I understood, and at that moment I was also thinking, it's like, this must be weird. It's like such a big thing. It was really very serious. Those are very serious allegations. And it's like, you typically don't make those without, firing a warning shot, which they haven't done.
And there was commentary, from various legal engagement we had. There was commentary from lawyers going, this is at the aggressive end of the spectrum. I recall comments like that.
So why do you think they went aggressively after you?
Well, you can only speculate really, because they obviously don't tell you. But you can only speculate, and then you just kind of go like, look, it's in the state of Delaware, as I understand it again from legal experts. You can file lawsuits without much evidence. Also, hand on heart, I still believe, even after all of the legal stuff that's been going on, that we haven't done anything illegal. You can do that in the US. You can file a lawsuit, which really is enormously expensive to defend. I think, when we start talking to our US lawyers, they said like, well, in terms of budgets, about $500,000 for the next 3 months. And like, we were a startup, it's like we were trying to grow as fast as possible. And like, you don't have free cash flow because you spend it all.
Well, it's also too, as a startup, it's not just the cost of defending the legal case. It's that the ability to acquire new customers or investment, which a startup hinges upon, is totally shut down. So speculation aside, a lawsuit like that is a very rapid way to shut down a startup. That is a fact. Whether that was the motivation or not, that would be speculation. But the fact remains is that avenue is an incredibly effective means of stifling and smothering a startup.
Okay, so obviously you've been served a lawsuit. What are your options then? And perhaps, and why didn't you fight? You're telling me these claims are bogus. They don't really stand up to scrutiny. There's really no evidence that any of these claims are valid or the principal claims are valid. Why didn't you fight? And what were your options?
And it was a crazy few weeks of working through those options. Your options are effectively stay the course and fight, go into liquidation, or 3, find a way to sell the company. The stay and fight was obviously our first port of call, but the reality of being a small business, needing to raise capital and needing to acquire new customers whilst fighting a financial giant and where it costs $1,000 per hour for a litigator was just not a viable option. Then the sale of the business, obviously when it's attached with legal risk, with a time scale attached to it, becomes a non-viable option. So then you're only left with one outcome. I mean, that's me summarising it. I don't think I've missed any options.
It was like...
That's
took us a week to figure that one out, and
Yeah.
then it was kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't think this is viable.
3 pretty terrible options, really, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously you fight hard to make I had them round the wrong way, but the stay and fight option work, or the can you find another home for the IP, but in reality, doing that at the scale we were is not viable.
So the lawsuit started November last year, is that correct? So
Yeah.
just over a year ago. Have you actually ever talked to somebody from FIS?
I tried, but no.
So a
No.
corporation sues you, makes a whole lot of claims,
Yeah.
and won't have a conversation with you, and never has.
No, nothing.
That's insane, isn't it?
Absolutely nothing.
So what was the reaction of customers first, the leadership team, employees, shareholders, in whatever order you want to answer it? Maybe
I'll
Shelley,
start
you
with
start.
customers probably
Yeah.
because customers are my bag.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, and I remember obviously you disclose as soon as it's appropriate because, in good faith to disclose what's going on, which I felt, incredibly sad about doing. But it was mostly one of support. I expected customers to maybe, thump the table, but it was one of support going, how can we help? This is terrible. We're really sorry to hear that. There was one of personal concern. Like a lot of my customers in the US actually reached out and said, are you okay? So, the life insurance industry is one, I think, of, people really care. And so it was a very human response from our customers. Then probably staff was one, I think, shock and bewilderment. You had some relatively young people, first job, having no idea what this possibly meant. Klaas, I mean, you could probably add
I
on
remember
shareholders.
the story. Like we got served. So like when you're being sued, they officially have to tell you that you're being sued. So they did this and you can do this in multiple ways. However, FAS chose to serve 2 directors, including myself, by just having a very big black car turn up in front of your house, totally like black windows, and 2 very like blackly overdressed guys. Like I was in shorts and t-shirts, and they were just probably having 3 layers of black clothing and a black cap on with like lots of things under their black clothes. That you couldn't see what they were. So like it was
Showing
pretty.
up to your house or to the
yeah,
office?
they turned up at my house,
Crazy.
knocking on the door, standing there with 2, and I was standing there with my like 3-year-old son or 4-year-old son at the time, and it's like he got visibly like worried about who these guys were. And I was kind of like, what the is this? But they chose to serve in that way. One of our colleagues, they also chose to deliver it to the office. So one of our colleagues was actually in the office, and she got served in the same way. Luckily, she was in the office with a bunch of other people. But it was just like, at that time we hadn't told staff yet, because it was just like we only had known for like 36 hours, and you're still talking to the board, and you're still trying to actually get your head around it, talk to the lawyers and all of that kind of stuff. So like I also had to talk to her and just kind of talk her through everything. And there was just a lot of, I think shock is still the number one emotion that you get the first time, especially also like those on the product and technology team, because they are effectively being accused of, putting FAS code into our code base. And the first thing they all said, like, we're actually trying to do the exact opposite of that. I was like, what is their evidence? Like, have they got any customers saying...
And what do you say to an employee who, in essence, has been alleged by a Fortune 500 company on the other side of the world that you're a criminal? What do you say to an employee in that context?
It is, you know, obviously you say that you know that they haven't done that, and secondly that they're an employee, and so like they've got a few layers of protection there, because one of the first things that, you know, some of the employees actually said, like, what is my risk? So are they gonna come after me too? What do I need to do? Do I need to run away? It's like, what's happening here? You know, we even had some actuaries there who said, like, holy, you know, shit, are they gonna, like, come after me through the Society of Actuaries? You know, and file a complaint over there. What are they gonna do? And so, like, you don't really have answers.
No.
And that's probably the problem too. You know, you have an enormous amount of sympathy, but, like, you don't have answers.
You deal with a lot in a startup. You deal with every angle. Like, you deal with challenging sales situations, challenging customer situations, challenging staff, cash, all of those things as a startup. And you deal with these quite complex situations and you work your way through them. And this just was one that was like, there's no playbook. There's no, you know, even working with the board, you know, who collectively have a huge amount of experience, there were no obvious answers. You are in uncharted territory at that point.
Yeah, and one of the extreme cases was also that, like, in the case, and, you know, as soon as people know, they start obviously reading the case because it's public. And so one of our employees was named personally because he had worked at a life insurer that, you know, used to use FS products. And they literally said something like he had exposure to FAS IP, and it's possible that he has taken it to Montoux so that Montoux could shortcut their product development. I think personally, I find that quite a wild thing to say without any evidence.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like me saying John O, you know, has intercourse with chickens. I could make that allegation, but I need to provide evidence,
It's
presumably.
quite a jump from actual models, but
Well, you know, let's lighten the mood a little bit, but you know, like, so just an allegation, like, but no evidence.
No evidence, and, like, you know, in I think in New Zealand, you know, one of the lawyers told me that would be a scandalous thing, which is a technical term. It's kind of like goes a bit far, you know, for a lawyer to say that.
And so if I just go back, Shelley, you were in the US, Klaas and many of the team here in New Zealand. Was your I mean, what did you do, and was your experience different because you were in a different market?
I think the US legal environment is a lot scarier than jurisdictions like New Zealand, the UK, Euro, and you know it's more aggressive, and you know there's a culture of suing. So I definitely had a wariness of going, okay, am I US employees, you know, and as a co-CEO and a director in the US, you certainly have questions around going, what's my personal risk or exposure here? Also, too, you know, the original filing was in the US, and the interesting thing was in the US, with our US customer base, the majority of our customers were not FIS customers, not for their core actuarial technology, and so to be served in the US and have those customer contracts sort of embroiled in it, who actually have nothing to do with US FIS in terms of their core actuarial modelling needs. It was kind of warped. So
Shelley, you were in the US. So was your experience being in the US when most of the team was in New Zealand or elsewhere? You mentioned someone in the UK as well. Was it different in any meaningful way?
Yeah, I think definitely being in the US as the co-CEO and the co-CEO in the US and a director in the US and having a nervousness about the US litigation culture, litigious environment. You know, you certainly in New Zealand you wouldn't worry about that sort of thing, or the UK. You know, I think seems a much more prudent jurisdiction. But in the US, I did have there was that sort of background feeling of unease of going, well, am I at risk personally? Also, too, I think there was the interesting fact that the majority of our customers in the US, so all but one, were not FIS customers, not for their core actuarial platform. So we had customers who were using our technology who were impacted by this lawsuit who weren't FIS customers. They may have been in a small sense, but not for their core actuarial platform. And yeah, so that seemed a somewhat ridiculous or warped outcome, that our business with them could be compromised by a company who they didn't actually do business with. And the US was where they chose to file.
And were these clients, these big life insurers, were they angry with FIS, or how do they feel about things?
Again, the US being of a litigious environment, the immediate reaction of life insurance in these situations is one of risk management. Oh, okay, let's make sure we're not compromised. So at a personal level, disappointed and angry. So at an individual human level, at a human level, people are like, this is wrong. You guys are innovative. This is getting in the way of innovation. But at a company or corporate level is, let's get as far away from this as possible. And I have a bit of a view that the industry will suffer. It's often talked about that the life insurance industry, and particularly actuarial, suffers from a lack of innovation and is behind the times. And, I think one of those factors is until corporates stand up to this sort of behaviour, innovation will continue to get stamped out through litigious means.
All right. And I understand you left the US shortly thereafter. What happened in terms of you leaving, shutting down any US operations? What happened then?
Yeah, well, so it was once we'd made the decision to shut down our US operations because it was no longer feasible to operate in the context of this lawsuit. So we terminated all staff, including myself. I think that was the day before or the day of my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, that was a really good birthday week. And then set about preparing to return from New Zealand. But probably my husband talks about this as well. One of the saddest things was I had all the Montoux conference kit, the stands and things. And one of the saddest things we had to do, we had a little van, was drive to the dump with all of the Montoux branded stands, like there were 3 or 4 different things, and throw them all in a skip.
Crazy.
And Wayne,
what
my husband said that was really sad. Yeah, he was like, for him, that was the kind of quite a metaphorical point of going, it's all in the bin.
Yeah, sadly perfect metaphor, really.
Yeah, it was a pretty bleak November. No, it would have been a bleak early December day, some outskirts of Richmond, and piling, 3 sort of years of conference branding, in a dumpster.
Awful. So, Klaas, I understand you guys appointed a liquidator in New Zealand. Do you want to talk about what liquidator is and why one was appointed? You guys were still in business, you still had customers, all of that stuff. So,
you basically look, as a board, you always need to do a solvency test.
Okay. And you were a director of Montoux at the time?
Yeah, I was a director of Montoux at the time, or officially still am. But then, when you're in liquidation, you basically doesn't mean anything other than you're by title director, no responsibilities, no duties, nothing. Anyway, so one of the duties as a director of an going concern is to decide every month of whether you're still a going concern. But after I'd say 2 weeks, we very much understood that something quite big had to happen for us to be able to conclude at the end of the month that we were still in a going concern, because we were actually at that moment in time raising capital, so we were obviously at that point in our cash cycle, and then secondly, we were working through some pretty substantial contracts But, as Shelley said, as soon as you kind of have enough information to have the good faith conversation with those parties, you tell them.
You have to tell them, right?
You have to. Yeah, of course.
There are
That's
legal clauses. Yeah.
Well, but that's also the only moral thing to do.
yeah.
Sure.
And so we did that, and that obviously, like, the first response that I got from, like, the actuaries that we were working with was like, oh yeah, it was, I hope we can still do this. But then as soon as the next meeting happened with them, there was always a lawyer in the room. And as soon as there's a lawyer in the room, I've learned, exactly that the answer is 90% of the time no.
Sure.
So that happened a lot in those, like, 1.5 weeks. So very quickly I understood that, like, not only our costs were, like, doubling or even more than that, because the court case alone, our revenue streams were also drying up, and we had a few renewals coming up early in the year. We just kind of, as a board, we couldn't conclude anything else other than we're running, this is not a viable business anymore. We don't have the cash to run it. So what do? You call a liquidator and you ask the approval of the shareholders for a voluntary liquidation. So, that's the right thing to do. But, to go from, before 1 November, thinking you've cracked it and you're on a really good path with, like, super exciting developments, to shutting down your business 29 days later. That was pretty hard.
And so you appoint a liquidator. Liquidator generally has to go and sell the assets or maximize the value of whatever's left in the business. So the liquidator, is that what he or she did?
Yeah, well, obviously they need to get their heads around the business, so that's the first thing they do. And they, they come into the business and literally, and he said he would do that. It's like I think we appointed him like 12, 48 and 12:51. The letters went out to all of the staff saying your employment contract has been terminated. It's just what they have to do.
Brutal, really, isn't it?
Less than 4 weeks before Christmas.
Yeah, and so, like, this is where it then really becomes, like, the first thing you're really starting to get worried about is the people.
Yeah.
Because some people, like, more than others, obviously, like, need a job. And so, like, that's probably the first thing that we as a team, leadership team, focused on, just finding new jobs for these people. But yeah, back to your question on the liquidator. He was still getting his head around what he had, so I helped him with, understanding what was there, all of the information, situation, court case, history, blah, blah. And I think it was the 5th of December, he got his first letter from FAS. Don't know exactly what it was in there, but, like, very strong language about, like, you're not able to sell it.
Right.
And so he also got very quickly, like, there was a lot of legal correspondence.
So basically FIS threatening or suing the liquidator, or what was it?
Yeah. Basically saying to the liquidator that if he would sell it, that would be, I interpret this, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm probably getting it wrong, but, that would be theft if he would sell it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, again, at this point, FIS has not had a conversation with any of you or presumably liquidator either. So
No, it's
just
just
again,
lawyers.
just a pure legal threat.
And no lawyer-to-lawyer conversations either, because I understand sometimes, so zero conversation in advance of any actions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what did your liquidator do with this threat?
I think liquidators are used to a few things.
They use the occasional violence.
They're used to threats, so I found him really clear-headed about it. I think he was, his first priority was to deal with the US court case, because that was obviously very expensive and there wasn't a lot of money left. So yeah, that was really his first point of focus. And he and his legal team managed to get the US case administratively closed.
Okay. So the US case disappears, kind of thing?
Late February, so, like, that's a good thing. And so obviously then the threats followed that they would sue in New Zealand. And so there's a lot of legal correspondence. And Obviously, the liquidator also does his own research into like, have these guys at Montoux actually done, and he comes to the same conclusion as I have, I think. Ask him. And then you basically just, and he just needed time to figure out what's the strategy here.
Yeah, I mean,
Because selling it obviously is pretty tricky when you're just being like put under so much pressure.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I'm just observing it. I was not as close to it as Klaas, but like I think the liquidation or the liquidator's process is just incredibly methodical. Like nothing seemed. Yeah, they are about how do we maximise value for the shareholders in a very methodical, quite black and white way.
Sure.
And so I guess I guess the liquidator working with Montoux, saw, okay, there is value and we need to work this through. It wasn't just a case of going, we need to throw the IP away and leave it. Definitely working through that process.
Gotcha. And I understand you were in the High Court recently, or you or Montoux, the liquidator. What was that about in the New Zealand High Court?
So eventually they did sue Montoux in May, I think.
Okay.
In
New Zealand,
in the High Court in Wellington, largely for the same kind of allegations. I sometimes just lose track what their accusations are, because lawyers write a lot,
right?
And they write a lot in lots of different words, and anyway. So we ended up. We, as in like myself, some of the shareholders, and some board members, and the liquidator in the back row, behind the bench, and listening there to being there for a 2-day hearing, which was about an injunction hearing, which basically is all about whether the liquidator is allowed to sell the assets or not while the court case is going on. And yeah, I'd say like, I don't wish that on anyone to be there, especially not as a, former CEO or founder or someone who's like emotionally very attached to the business. It's an extremely cold environment.
Yeah, so let me understand. So you're in High Court. You're not, it's just lawyers talking to lawyers.
Yeah.
They're talking about your business, determining the future of it.
They're talking about me.
Yeah, about you personally.
Yeah.
Was FIS, anyone from FIS in the room?
Not that I know.
All right. So again,
just
lawyers making allegations about you and Montoux in front of a judge and other lawyers.
At some point, that lawyer said that, shortly after the liquidation, Klaas ended up in the media. I did not. And so there's a few other examples where he just said things that were just totally not true about me. And it was like, but yeah, you just sit there and, behind the bar, as they say, and you can't really do very much. And obviously they try to bring their own case, and in doing so, they're not very complimentary about, 10 years of your life. So yeah, that was pretty tough. Although it was really great that quite a few shareholders actually turned up, and just to provide moral support to it, and actually, see it with their own eyes, kind of thing. And so, like, on the one hand, it was a very unpleasant, emotional experience. On the other hand, was also just another sign of support. That we have a lot of strong support around this business. Obviously, the liquidator's in control; it's his thing now. So yeah, it was quite double in some sense.
Right. So how did shareholders respond? Obviously, they've lost their money. You guys raised a bit of cash over the years. How did shareholders generally respond?
I thought it was incredible. There was like nobody who rang me or said in any of the shareholder meetings. We did lots of shareholder meetings just to keep them up to date, saying like, you guys should have known this was preventable. Like, this is all like your fault and all that. No one.
Why do you think they were so good?
I don't know, actually, to be perfectly honest. I would have totally understood if some of them would have been pretty angry, because there was really substantial amounts of money at risk.
I'll cut in here because you're probably too humble to do it, Klaas. It's because people believed in Klaas. As the founder, So the majority of shareholders knew Klaas personally. They knew the quality of person he is, and they knew his intellect. They knew how innovative he was, and his moral compass, and that the allegations were just not true.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's pretty awful. I don't have anything useful to
But
contribute.
I think that was the shareholders understood very quickly, and we're angry, not at Montoux, at the situation, and saw it as unjust. I don't think because they'd lost their own investment. I think that was part of it, but I think it was the injustice of an innovative company doing something pretty cool and being taken out in this way.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. So what's the state of play? What next?
Yeah, so it's now really now we're past the injunction phase. The next thing is discovery.
Okay. What does discovery mean for
discovery?
people?
Yeah, sorry, there's like so many legal terms that I wasn't aware of at all. So I'd rather would have not been aware of them still.
Part-time lawyer.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of GPTing. But yeah, it basically means that a lot of the legal correspondence is just like you can just say a lot of things without having to back it up.
Yeah.
Without having to provide evidence. And now it's really the time where both sides deliver the information to the other side to back up, their defense or their allegations. That's really it. And so like it's gonna be a lot of work to provide all that. I've just understood that the judge has been hinting at the appointment of a independent specialist, court appointed specialist. So now for a lot of people that wouldn't mean anything, but it's actually not very common at all, and it's actually very good because that would give me a whole lot more confidence that the two software packages are going to be compared in a honest way.
All right.
And there can only be one outcome, and that is that they'll look at the Montoux software and they'll look at the FAS software and say like, where the bloody hell is all the copying? So again, I just say with a hand on my heart, so I just cannot imagine that anyone would ever find anything there.
And are customers still using the software?
Yep. Can't say too much, but yep.
Okay, so you've still got customers using, so the software still works, still does its actuarial stuff, still out in the wild.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I did some research before this podcast, and I looked at the FIS. I looked a little bit into the business, the FIS share price. If I look at the return of FIS over last year, they've lost 25% of value versus the S&P 500, which has gained 14. 3-year horizon, let's say 5-year horizon, they've lost half their value, whereas the S&P 500's doubled. So they're basically performing terribly as a business. Do you think this lawsuit has anything to do with their actual general market performance?
Well, I can only say that like companies, if you look at not the companies that do really well, they come out with extremely exciting product. They've got something to sell. I don't think FAS has got much of that in my humble opinion.
Well, yeah, you got a product from the 90s, you said, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what they're selling, and presumably...
And continue to sell.
Yeah.
With unhappy customers.
With unhappy customers, yeah. Well, that's,
so,
that's not a recipe, is it?
Yeah, customers of all of the actuarial tech providers, customers were most openly anti-FIS in terms of sentiment. Yeah.
And in that sense, like, I think this court case is actually quite, the one that's going on right now in New Zealand is actually quite important for the industry. Because essentially, and again, I might be getting this wrong, this is just my amateur legal understanding, but look, what happened was really Montoux received some information about profit models because we had to have that in order to be able to migrate their models onto
Profit is the FIS system.
Yeah, Profit is the FIS actuarial system, and so some customers, and it was only a minority, as Shelley said before. Some of our customers were using that platform, and they obviously wanted to migrate, one or a few models, actuarial models onto our platform. And in order to do that, you just have to have some information about what that thing is, because otherwise
We need the mathematics.
You need the mathematics, because otherwise you can't, implement mathematics.
So if you've got actuarial models in a particular system A, in this case FIS's profit,
Yeah.
and you want to move into another one,
Yeah.
is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And so it was really interesting. So first of all, a big question within this court case is like, what of that is actually IP?
Right.
Are actuarial models IP? If FAS had lots of template models, which customers then use and then change, and like once customers start changing it, this is still FAS's IP.
Sort of like Google Sheets for me. I use a template of Google Sheets, and
Yeah.
if I modify it,
Yeah.
is it mine or is it Google's?
Yeah. And again, I might have misunderstood it, but other shareholders and other people, during the hearing heard that too. They said like all of these templates, modified or not, are FAS's IP. One step further, they said their representation, so their lawyers said, and again, other shareholders understood the same thing. It's not only the mathematical notation, it's also every single number that rolls out. So if you just create an analogy with a Google Sheet or an Excel models, like you start with a template, you change it, and then you start using it for making financial decisions. Microsoft saying, I don't only own that model that you've got, I also own all of the numbers that come out.
Right, so tell me basically the FIS lawyers stood in the High Court of Wellington saying all of the amended templates, all the numbers, everything that comes out of that system is intellectual property of FIS, not of its clients. These big life
That's
insurers.
how I understood it. I might be proven wrong, but that was the understanding of me and various other people that were there too.
Yeah, it's a crazy claim. That's a crazy claim. I guess we'll figure out what happens from
Well,
here.
Yeah, but it's legal or not, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but like if that is true, and this is why it's so important for the industry, if that is true, it is literally almost impossible. Financially, anything's possible, but like financially, like to make a business case viable to move to another platform becomes extremely difficult.
So let's talk about the industry. So for other startups, we've got we have tens of thousands of listeners every episode. A lot of those are working in startups. Most of them are trying to go global. They're trying to disrupt an incumbent like FIS with just a better product or a better proposition. What's your advice? What are some of your learnings? Maybe start with you, Shelley. What are some of your learnings in this process, giving advice to someone starting a Montoux-like journey?
I mean, it's pretty challenging, right? Because how do you prevent, there's not much of a mitigation strategy.
Could there have been one?
Yeah, I'd say like the thing that would definitely, if they would have not been able to sue us in the US, but in New Zealand, it would have been far less impactful.
Yeah.
Right.
But that would have meant not having a US presence at all.
But is that necessary? Do you need a US presence to have US clients?
You really do not. You should not have. And again, not a lawyer. This is what I've been told. In order, once you've got meaningful business relationships with an entity inside the US, and that's not a LinkedIn subscription, a bit
Sure.
more than that, then you can be sued.
Yeah, that was
In the
my
US.
that was my recollection also of. So yeah, it wasn't just the fact of having a company in the US. Even if you were operating out of a New Zealand or a UK entity, if you were doing sizable contracts, which most of these things are with a business in the US, you could still be sued. Yeah, I think it is around really understanding, is the US, it's got to be a factor in determining your entry into the US. It's a higher risk than other markets like the EU or the UK or Australia or Asia Pac. So it should weigh into your decision making of it is a low, it's low probability, but high impact if you were looking at it on a risk matrix, but it's sort of something a board and an executive team should have a discussion about, I think, before entering the US, and then reviewing any insurance, because insurance is available, but it's actually very hard to decipher what exactly you're covered for in terms of legal exposure.
Even to insurance experts like you guys.
And on our board had a degree of insurance expertise, so there's no way to stop someone who decides to take this avenue.
No, but what you can do is
understand more about it.
Yeah, so, but also, look, these kind of companies have got a certain posture, litigation posture. There's companies that if there's, history, it basically tells you.
Yeah.
If they've done this to another startup before.
And has FIS done this to other people?
Yes, it was a cannabis payment system, Spence Labs, I think they were called. So that it was different allegations. There's lots of court cases going on now around that startup. So yeah, it's not the first time.
But just going back to, again, other founders who are listening or founding teams who are listening, what can and should they do? Better insurance is an obvious one. Being aware and conscious of this is another thing. What other things would they or should they do?
But the point really is that some companies buy companies that are competitors. Some companies kill them. Some companies just go competition. And you can kind of predict it.
Right.
Yeah.
You just have to do your research on it.
So why don't you predict this?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's like this kind of risk had never come on my radar. You just hardly ever hear it.
And we would have thought we were too small, right? So I can't remember the numbers around the revenue, but we're talking factor of 1,000, and kind of contrast. So I think sort of that legal threat, our assumption would have been that legal threat would have emerged when we were actually of a more meaningful size, so not so at which point you have more resources. So I think Klaas makes a good point, and I think it goes into that research of, if you're looking at operating in the US market, you have to factor in the heightened risk of litigation. And as part of that understanding, you could easily research in your industry, is there much litigious activity? Is there a non-litigious competitor? Because a scan would tell you that information. And, it's not totally foolproof, but a scan would have told us, taking that highly critical or black hat lens, that would have flushed out and have gone, oh, okay.
Yeah, we knew
that could be a heightened threat. Yeah.
We definitely were aware that they were aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't think that they would, again, according to Shelley, sue us at this relatively early stage, but also without warning.
Right, yeah.
I thought you would always get an opportunity to kind of work things out.
Or have a conversation at least.
Because I've now heard many more stories, because one of the beautiful things about this has been that a lot of people proactively reached out to me, and offered support, but also told other stories. And so in many other cases, there was always an opportunity to work it out.
Right. I thought about that.
Never had that.
Yeah, because I did a little bit of research again before coming on this, and FIS is about 100 employees or something in New Zealand. I've got a country manager called Felicity Blake. I assume you've never met her.
Nah.
So, so there's somebody here being part of the legal process for a corporate masters who's never reached out. I tried to reach out to her before this interview, obviously didn't respond, not surprisingly. I then looked into FIS Systems, which is registered as a New Zealand company, because they've got big clients like ANZ, I think, is their biggest customer here. They're doing a big core banking implementation. So they're a pretty substantial organisation here. And their 3 directors, none of them are in New Zealand, right? You've got a general counsel called Julie Halperin in the US, Anita Lemire, who's in Australia, and a guy called Sachin, who's in Singapore. So they're directors of a New Zealand entity, a subsidiary here. And again, just doesn't feel like a corporate responsibility or engaging in any way. And you could argue it's just lawyers talking to lawyers. But what do you think of their moral obligations as people?
Oh, I don't think it's of a particularly high conduct. And it would be interesting, I know banks are increasingly having a lot of, ethics and code of conduct type questions and RFPs and things. I don't know, but how close to the line does some of this stuff sort of go?
And what are your thoughts, Klaas?
Again, because I never speak to anyone, I never have spoken to anyone
it's
at
a
FS.
bizarre situation,
literally
isn't it?
zero people, literally. And so you kind of just wonder about the corporate culture.
Right.
What is the culture like? And how do people internally respond to this? Like, is it fully in the hands of legal, or like are people from, the profit division still involved in all of this? What do they think about it? There must be like, I just don't know. It's like that whole thing is just a big black box for me.
Crazy. At the end of this process, still a big black box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there was a conversation at one of the shareholder meetings, and I'm sure any individual involved in this at FIS would say it's just business. It is. Okay, you can take that stance, but to me, business is the interaction of humans and human relationships. And I think meaningful business is done with good humans and good human relationships. And so I think you're doing another sort of business if you take that away and say it's just business. And I think the stories I've heard from customers echo that. They don't feel they don't talk about individuals and say, hey, they're a really great person to deal with, and our relationship with FIS is so strong because of these great human relationships. So, I think your conduct ultimately comes out in business results in the end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, hey, look, we've got to wrap up. It's a pretty awful story. It's obviously not a happy startup story. We're called Startup Theatre, so not all of our startup stories are great ones. This is obviously a pretty hideous one, particularly at a human level, like you just said, Shelley. But if you guys think about startups, have you given up on startups? Do you want to do more of it? Are you up for another one? What's your state of mind? I'll start with you, Shelley, and then go to Klaas, who's the founder.
So I'm actually working with another larger scale up. I believe in the startup industry. It's essential for innovation. It's fun. You do some really cool shit with cool humans. And for me, I know the Montoux outcome is a sad story, but the journey is not. The journey was a beautiful story, and some really amazing software was created. And I don't believe this is the end of disruption in the insurance industry. Something will come of it. So, yeah, I think if you're, it's all about the challenge, the cool humans you do it with, and that includes customers and shareholders and staff. Yeah, and I think once you've had a taste for it, it's pretty hard to do something else.
Great. And what about you, Klaas?
Yeah, so I've kind of taken a bit of time while I've been doing a couple of contracts around town, which are also product incubation type work in bigger companies, and it's just what I love doing. Take a problem, build product, test it, make it better, solve problems. So yeah, I'm working together at a good buddy of mine, and we've said to each other, okay, let's see what we can do with 2 people and a few thousand bots, that kind of thing. See how far we can get. All self-funded. So we kind of went like 2 people, no employees, no board,
right,
no shareholders, just a whole bunch of bots.
All right. So
see where we end up.
Right. So you can kill the startup, but you can't kill the startup and the founder, right?
Nah, I don't think so. It's the you just like the dopamine hit, from solving a good problem is it's pretty good.
And more broadly for the insurance industry in this case, you can't kill innovation. It's going to pop up. So however the story unfolds, the innovation that Montoux brought to the table will live on, in some form, because people will go, okay, it's possible to run models more efficiently and faster in the cloud. Like, there's a different way of doing this. And I know there are businesses out there already taking that on. So yeah, you can't murder innovation.
And it's gonna be amazing to see. Obviously you will have had like a million conversations like this, but the cost of software IP is just dwindling. So that's gonna be a real accelerator, I believe, within the insurance industry. That finally it's gonna become easier
Awesome.
to challenge the status quo.
Great. Okay, well, hey, thank you very much. I know it's a hard story to share. It's certainly a hard story to hear for me and many of our listeners. Really appreciate you doing that. All the best with you personally, whatever you're doing next, and long live Montoux.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hard
The
to kill that
story,
story.
I always say the story ain't over yet. Yeah,
no,
we'll
it's
see.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a little bit about dying here. In my mug that I'm drinking from, for those who aren't watching, it says, "Startups may die, but founders live forever." I hope that's true. I hope that's definitely true here. I hope that Montoux actually survives and doesn't die. But shit, what a crazy story. What a bunch of bullies. Yeah, what an awful situation to find yourself in. You're trying to change the world. You're trying to innovate. You're having the courage to employ people, ask for money, invent the future, and big bad bully sues you out of nowhere. And I think the worst thing about it for me is at no point has any employee of FIS, which serves banks and insurers here in New Zealand, ever tried or responded to a conversation with Montoux. I just find that abhorrent at a human level. But beyond that, there's clearly some incredible lessons, I think, that apply to lots of you who are startup founders or operators, going into litigious markets, going into places where there is a well-resourced incumbent, maybe one that's losing market share. And when that happens, you just don't know how things are going to turn out. And so you really do need to think about how would we respond to a situation like this? Do we have the right kind of coverage? Do we have a plan B? Do we have sufficient diffusion in our sources of revenue in our business? Those sort of things. So, it's a tale of caution. Yeah, it's an awful story. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But it is also a tale of caution about the sort of things you have to think about if you are to flourish and change the world. So thank you for joining us today on Startup Theatre. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully, despite, I guess, the negativity and turmoil of that story, you found it interesting, rewarding, and maybe helped you reflect on your journey in the startup world. See you next time.